Patrick Cooch from the Carlton Footy Club. You're listening to the Coaches Panel.
James Walker here from the Brisbane Lions.
Jason Johannesson from the Western Bulldogs.
Luke Parker here from the Sydney Swans.
It's Roy Sloane here from the Adelaide Crows, and you're listening to the Coaches Panel.
Max Orr, Melbourne Football Club.
This is Nat Fyfe from the Fremantle Footy Club, and you're listening to the Coaches Panel.
Hello, my friends. It is MJ from the Coaches Panel. You are 9 rounds down in your fantasy footy season, more than a third of the way through, and now just a few weeks away from the last big moving period of the year, the multi-buy rounds. I want to talk about that a little bit later on in the episode. I want to talk about some cash generation, some important trades that people need to consider making this week, and some popular moves I'm seeing across the fantasy community that maybe we need to reconsider. And of course, getting to our Patreon questions, a massive podcast episode lined up to help me with it. I got Ben on the line. Hello, mate. How are you?
Hey, mate. Been suffering a bit with the man flu, so not too good, but very excited to get stuck into this one.
Mate, you must have been on your deathbed. Are you okay?
That's it, man. Absolutely. To be honest, mate, I was celebrated Jack Zeebel's score a little bit too hard on Saturday night, so
there you go.
The consequences now.
Hey, mate, anyone that owns him right now, fair enough too. That's how you spend your Saturday night. I've also got Rids on the line. Hello, buddy.
How you going, mate?
Good. Are you a Zeebel owner too?
Of course I am.
I want to talk about Zeebel a little bit later on. Hey, like we said right at the top, there is plenty of stuff I want to talk about it. And I feel like over the past 2 to 3 episodes, there's been one player's name continually come up, and it's not Tom Rockliff. I want to talk about Sam Walsh. A few weeks ago, Rainman and I had a conversation about him last week. Again, we did a live Q&A via Facebook, which you went and been able to grab it via Spotify and iTunes. Make sure you subscribe if you haven't done it already. I gave some of my thoughts about it, but I'm keen to get your boys' take about Sam Walsh, because, Ben, I suppose, rightly or wrongly, there is still the two trains of thought about Sam Walsh. It's probably 2 weeks ago was the right time to trade him out in terms of peak price, because he keeps dropping now. And then there is again, rightly or wrongly, the run him to his buy and then trade him. Where are you seeing coaches make some mistakes right now? Because we are starting to see him slow in scoring, whether it be just fatigue in his body or just, natural deviation, whatever it is. What's your take right now on Sam Walsh and what owners should be contemplating to do with him if he's not already been traded out of their side?
Well, let me ask you a question, mate. Can you just remind me how old Sam Walsh is?
He is 18 years old.
Yeah. It's a fair point to just keep in the back of your mind when you're thinking the bloke's played the first 9 rounds of the AFL season, done some amazing things.
Probably second in the Blues best and fairest too.
Yes, and that's only because there's one outlier talent at the club.
That's right.
He's definitely been number one. No, and he's been terrific. He's been absolutely superb, but I think the reality was it's a very interesting thing we've noticed in the fantasy community where so many people, it's almost the first time in my recollection of playing the game where we had a situation where a rookie had a break-even score over 100 across the formats, and unanimously the decision was to hold him.
Yeah.
Very, very weird circumstances. So let's go through a little bit of his season. He was dominant. He had a little bit of a struggle probably the first few weeks when it came to the fourth quarters. So he was struggling to kind of run out games, but he was doing so much in the first 3 that it didn't really matter. But we're starting to see now over the last month just a little bit of that work that's to be expected. He's getting a bit tired. He's struggling a little bit. Carlton's sort of put in a few inconsistent efforts. He probably needs a rest at some point. Maybe he gets up to his bye, but to be honest, mate, I would be quite happy if I was the coach of the Carlton Footy Club for him to miss a week and get back to his firing best. But regardless of that, he's a guy that's on the slide. We're starting to see that he's struggling to play out games. So when we're looking at rookies and the value of a rookie becomes 500,000 or 550,000, depending on what competition you play, we can no longer assess that player as a rookie. Suddenly that player is worth more than 80% of the competition, and we need to evaluate them as such. So personally, a couple of weeks ago, I traded because I just thought, look at this guy. Not that anyone particularly cares about my team, but look at this guy. He's done, superbly for me. but suddenly he's struggling a little bit. He's got a break even over 100, and he's only 18. And I don't expect the best rookie season we ever saw was Toby Green under unusual circumstances.
Yep.
I think he averaged around 100, but prior to that, obviously he was leading the GWS midfield division essentially. But outside of that, it's pretty well Joel Selwood, who went at about 87. So a couple of weeks ago, Sam Walsh was going at 95, and as good as we all know Sam Walsh will be, I'm very adamant that he's going to be an absolute superstar of the competition. I realistically thought that the average is going to come down to at least 90 and probably a lot less because unlike Joel Selwood, who had a brilliant midfield brigade around him, Carlton's obviously in a different situation. So looking at history and trying to evaluate future rookie performances can sometimes be fraught with danger, but we do need to be thinking about the fact that this guy is no longer a rookie because he is priced at over 500,000. So I think that's a decision that a few coaches have been ruining a little bit, and now it's an interesting circumstance because the break even still is around 100, but he's dropped maybe 30 to 50,000 across the competitions, and like I said, a potential rest to me seems inevitable. But also, if he doesn't get that rest, that might actually be the worst possible thing. The scores may continue to decline. So going to be very interesting, but when we're talking about rookies, we need to be evaluating them at their actual fantasy price.
Rids, I'm keen on your take a little bit. This is probably about a fortnight ago when he hit his peak price point in terms of cash value. There was some pretty good options to go and move him on, depending on the format you prefer to play. Nat Fyfe was arguably at what his cheapest price will probably be this year. Zach Merritt in the midfield, was probably another one coaches may have been considering. So for those that have traded him out and upgraded and got a premium, happy days. What are coaches now that still have him do? Is it now cut and run now? Or is it, okay, now you're a little bit in, you've lost some money. Is there any merit in holding Sam Walsh? I guess that's the question I'm asking.
So it depends on the priority of who you want in before the buy. So last week we saw Lachie Whitfield come out and go 190 and then 170 in Supercoach, okay? So if you must have him this week and you've got Sam Walsh sitting there at 150, 200,000 less, that's an easy down up, isn't it?
Mm.
So, I mean, if that's what you're after, that's what you're after. At some point in time, you're going to need Whitfield in your team.
Yes.
Okay? So what about Dangerfield this week? If he misses, do you need to cover the forward line? We're already seeing massive outs for the long periods, okay? Devon Smith, Dan Menegola, so on and so forth. Maybe there's someone in the forward line that you've been looking at who looks a lot better last week that is very, very cheap, and I'm talking about one guy in particular right now, in Isaac Heaney, okay? Is he a priority this week to cover a Dangerfield, and so on and so forth? So it really becomes down to the priority of your team. But I would be looking at making that trade. I made that trade 2 weeks ago.
Yeah.
I would be looking at making that trade, but I'd be looking at the draw coming up. 2 weeks ago, you could have spent less than 100,000 and gone Walsh to Rockcliffe.
Yeah, wow.
Rockcliffe went, 160, then 100 in his next two?
Yeah, something like that.
Yeah, so, I mean, it's got to be a decision about points, on-field points, how to utilise that money. The last thing we want to do is, and we've spoken about this many times through the course of our journey, okay, on Coaches Panel and wherever else, that we don't get attached to cash cows. They're called cash cows for a reason, We've got to fatten the rookies, fatten the cows, and then we cull them, okay? Now, we either cull them or we upgrade them. When a guy hits 400,000 or whatever else, you're not going back down. So Walsh going down doesn't make sense. Walsh going up makes a world of sense.
Well, what do you mean by that? Because a coach could go, well, I'm downgrading him to get the cash I need to get an Atkins up or a Gibbons up or a Bailey Scott. Talk me through that process, because you could hear that initially and go, well, hang on, of course I can take him down. I can do what I like.
Yeah, but you're losing points on field. You're losing a 70, 80, 90-point player on field and then getting a rookie that's not even guaranteed to be playing in 2 weeks.
Yeah.
So the options now compared to the options earlier, 100% different, okay? We're seeing guys that have been on lists being given opportunities now because the initial rookies have been tiring. Like, you only have to look at Willem Drew on the weekend, okay, who got dropped. He went back to the SANFL, 32 touches, 12 clearances later, and then we see a Joe Ackley, who was the guy who was given an opportunity, and, I mean, he didn't really impact the game at all.
Yeah.
Like, I'm not having a go at him or anything like that, but, I mean, but again, like, so I wouldn't be surprised, I don't know if any of you guys would be, if Willem Drew comes straight back in for Ackley this week.
No, wouldn't shock me at all.
No. So this is the whole idea, is those guys that started were clear best 22 at that point in time. Now we've got injuries. Look at Jack Ross, didn't get a chance because of Cochin, then he got injured, unfortunately. But he wasn't staying in that team when Cochin comes back.
No.
You know, and we can look at another guy, Rotham, okay, over at the Eagles.
Yeah.
So he's had 2 brilliant games, I thought. But he gets dropped at every opportunity because there's someone that they think is a clear best 22. Constable's another one. You know? So the options that we're getting now, like we've got Liam Stocker, who, in all honesty, okay, and again, I'm not knocking the kid. He was going to be a good player when he gets older, okay? But the fact of the matter is he's not as fantasy relevant as Walsh. So you might be losing 30, 40, 50 points a game at any point in time from downgrading. Yes, of course, you're stockpiling your cash, but why can't you do that going to Gibbons down?
Yeah, gotcha. Yeah, take Gibbons down to Stocker, take Walsh up to a gun.
Yeah, correct. I understand the thought process of keeping the cash and then upgrading through the buys. I fully understand that, guys. But the fact of the matter is we've got 3 trades a buy round. In that first initial one, we should have already been planning, and we don't need to use any trades. So you can cull a couple of guys if you really, really want.
Yeah, exactly.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, and then you can pick the guys that get named through the buys as the cows. But at this point in time, anyone that comes in now, I can't guarantee they're going to be there the week after.
No, you as you've said, you're needing some long-term serious injuries to create opportunities. He's not a cash cow, but someone like a Soldo, you know, barring obviously a crap suspension this week, you knew he's going to be in the side for the next 6 to 8 weeks. That's what you're talking about. He's looking for the windows of opportunities for cows, and that's where opportunity, like a Ross, that's going to be coming up. I'm intrigued. Talk to me, lads, about because I want to talk about Riley O'Brien in a second. What about someone like a Robotham or a Robotham or whatever you want to call it? It was someone like him with Sydney trying to, regenerate their list on the fly. And it's showing some positive signs. Blakely's going to be a star of the competition when Heaney and Mills get released in the midfield. We know they're good. Dawson's showing some nice signs. But are we seeing a player like him? I don't think he's got a great scoring ceiling about him, but does he have some job security about him? As again, it's speculative, but with Sydney trying to regenerate the list, is he one we could consider, even though he's had a price rise?
Well, isn't one of their co-captains coming back this week?
Yeah.
So wouldn't you think that Rowbottom might be and again, Rowbottom's, I think he just needs to adjust to senior football, okay? And he's going to be a player.
Yeah.
Very much like Ollie Florent from a couple of years ago, okay?
Yeah.
Or a Jack Bowes.
Yeah,
they just need to get accustomed to senior football, and they will be fine.
Yeah,
Don't
give
worry
him 10
about that.
games, yeah.
Yeah, Rowbottom has been dominating the NEFL. So he finds the ball, he uses the ball, he scores well, he tackles. He's got the attributes there to be a very good player. Remember a couple of years ago with Jack Bowles, and we were saying that, geez, this guy could be the best player out of the draft.
Yeah.
So initially we all jumped on it, and we went, oh, bugger me. He has got no scoring potential. He just needed that time. Look at him now.
Yeah, he's
their
stud.
best player.
Yeah, he's a stud.
Anyways, I'll let Benny answer his part.
Yeah, I mean, he's an obvious option potentially if you want someone who might get a fair few games. But I was quite impressed with Robert Young's debut match, and he's a mature age guy that's coming through at the moment. Has the round 12 bye, which for a lot of teams, I think round 13 is going to be the one to navigate, and potentially round 12 is one that a lot of people can get away with grabbing another rookie in. So if you're looking for a rookie who I think, showed enough in his first game and has probably won himself at least, a couple more games, I think he's the guy. He's the guy for me anyway. So, look, I would be looking at him. You've also got the possibility of potentially a Joe Atley coming through, but like we spoke about, Willem Drew was very, very good last week in the secondary competition. So, yeah, we're gonna be tossing it up. But the beauty of this whole situation is it's gonna force innovation in a lot of ways. So, a couple of weeks ago, we're looking at different types of trades, whether that might be a premium that hasn't scored very well. So you look at someone like Lachie Whitfield. When he got injured, taking him down to maybe someone like a Heath Shaw would have been a great move at the time.
Yeah.
And you make a couple of $100,000 there. Now the prices haven't come in as much as you would have liked, but there's still probably they've still come in about $170K from that initial trade. I would have said maybe $150K, and then on the flip side, you've also made that $200K, so you can start to get a little bit of innovation through those what we used to be termed the broadbent trades. So, that's a new way of looking at it, because we might not necessarily have the greatest rookies to go to this time around, and the coaches that can adapt to that obviously ever-changing environment are the ones that are going to succeed through the buy round. So quite interesting at the moment, but I was quite impressed with Robert Young, so I'll be looking at him closely.
You mentioned a couple of really interesting points, and I do want to talk about Riley O'Brien now a little bit later on. You talk about some unique ways of cash generation, and I want to unpack that in a moment. But you talk about someone like Lachie Whitfield. Now, owners that held him and had a Jay Lockhart come on ground, like, hey, luck just went your way, my friend, because you got 90-odd, and then a huge 170-190 kind of score. So, sometimes when luck's with you in fantasy footy, it's with you. Other times, it can be completely against you. But, look, Riz, it was something we spoke about on the Coaches Panel podcast, and Rain Man spoke about it as well, about when it comes to someone like a Lachie Whitfield, you've even mentioned it earlier this episode, he is probably someone you want to have in your completed side. He didn't have that cash drop we'd hoped for, though. He had such an incredible score. But to look at it in just the linear sense of, well, Whitfield, I traded him out, or I didn't get him as cheap as, I'd hoped because he got such a monster score. That's a very linear way of looking at it, because there's still some other avenues to consider of what's happened over the past 2 weeks, even if his score's not going to drop, price isn't going to drop as drastically as we'd hoped.
Yeah, exactly right. So, in those 2 weeks, we've allowed a few rookies, especially defensive rookies, to generate more cash in those 2 weeks. So I'm just looking at it now from a dream team perspective, In that period of time, Marty Hall's gone up 50,000. A Jordan Clark's gone up quite a bit. A Dersman's gone up quite a bit. Lockhart went up quite a bit. So what happens then, is these guys have made up so much ground and got to a point where they're peaking, over 400,000, that you're looking at, and I'll just use Dream Team as an example, of having 750,000 player Whitfield, who is clearly an absolute gun at this year, and almost, I don't like using it, but must have.
Yeah.
But he's only 750, and we've got 2 rookies now in the mid-400s. So what we've done, is we've allowed 2 rookies to peak, and suddenly a downgrade, upgrade option for those 2 rookies means you can get Whitfield.
Yeah.
So whilst Whitfield initially went over 800 and everything else, that was always going to be problematic to get him then, because we're going to buy him at maximum price. But because he's had that injury, which was poor luck at the first instance, and he dropped a little bit of coin, and then on the week just gone, he dropped a little bit more besides in AFL fantasy. We've still allowed guys to get to a point where we could still go one down, one up.
Yeah.
So And some teams, okay, weren't lucky enough to have owned Lockhart, okay? And this is, we talk about this every year, MJ.
Yeah.
Like, let's not sugarcoat this. Luck plays massive role in fantasy football.
Oh, you need skill to get into, have an opportunity to win it, but you need luck to tip you over the line.
But not even that. Like, you can't tell me that making a choice between Lockhart a couple of weeks ago or not getting him, and no one could have predicted Whitfield to get injured and Lockhart to go 90 and 100 in those 2 weeks.
No, he was a 40.
And then come out the week that Whitfield comes back for 190 and scores a 40.
Yeah.
No one can predict that.
No.
That is pure luck. So good luck to you guys, you know.
Take it when you get it.
A little bit of bad luck when Whitfield got the 36. But again, let's not talk about it being the right decision because someone else may very well have gone and got a Heath Shaw and didn't have to play a Sam Collins for those 2 weeks.
Yeah, correct. Yeah, they
might
got the points.
have gone Walsh to Rockcliffe using that money.
Sure.
And got an extra, 260 compared to 145.
Yeah.
120 points there.
Yeah.
So they've actually made up ground from that investment. Yes, they've lost the 190,
sure,
but Heath Shaw scored nearly 130.
Yeah.
So that's only a 60-point drop-off, but you've made that and plenty more in spades.
And improved your overall side in the process.
Correct. Oh, well, you haven't really improved it because you've still used, and this is where people don't quite get it, you've still used 2 trades to bring in 2 premiums.
Sure.
So you've traded a premium down to another premium, and then you've upgraded a fattened cow to a premium. So you've still, in essence, gone 1 down, 1 up to get the 2.
Yes.
Okay, so you've improved your side by 1 premium, but you've still used the 2 trades. But what they've done is they've increased their on-field scoring for those couple of weeks.
Yeah, 100%.
And they've allowed their rookies to get fat to grab Whitfield next week for 1 down, 1 up.
Yeah, perfect. Exactly right.
That's it. And just on that as well, so, you know, we're talking about how luck plays a big role, but trust the process a little bit.
Yep.
We're looking at a guy like Lachie Whitfield, and, you know, I'm seeing a big 190 next to his name, but, you know, we've been playing this game for, a lot of us have been playing it for over a decade. The number of 190-plus scores you could count on one hand.
Oh, there's normally one a year, isn't there? Yeah.
Yeah, it's insane. It's the factors that have gone into this equation playing out the way it has have been highly unusual. So whilst, you know, potentially you bring in Lockhart plays his 2 weeks, and then Whitfield comes and there was the greatest idea to hold on to him because it's just worked out perfectly for you. I would say, you know, if you ran that simulation 1,000 times, 999, it's not working out anywhere near as good for you. So we're going to keep that in the back of our heads. The other positive, you know, that we're talking about with Whitfield, which Rid's kind of alluded to, is that $755,000 for non-owners is a very decent price to be bringing in the guy that's had, you know, a 30 score. This is for Dream Team anyway. A 30 score in his average, and is still averaging the most points in the game. So he's averaging 123. And Brodie Grundy's second best at the moment with 119. You know, if you take out the 30, which is purely luck-based because he got injured in it, you know, it's well above 130. So we're potentially getting the best score in the competition. You know, who knows exactly what's going to happen in the future, but so far, almost half a season in, he's been clearly the best fantasy scorer this year. So we're getting him for $755,000. I know if his name was Dane Swan back in his heyday, people would have been quite happy to be paying something that cheap for him. So
yeah, exactly.
You know, these are all the types of factors that we need to be paying. We need to be paying attention to. It would have been great to start with him, but for non-owners right now, this is a very exciting opportunity.
Yeah, it certainly is. You know, and in Supercoach, it's a little different. You've got Shannon Hearn, who's averaging comparable as him, which is just a top off 117,000. Both of them are averaging 116.9. Both of them are pretty lowly owned too, in contrast to the start of the year. Is Whitfield a must again, we're always hesitant at the coaches panel to use the phrase must have. There's so many unique variations and permutations that go into every single person's side, so it's always difficult to say, or maybe unfair to say must have. But do you need to get Lachie before his multi-buy round, or is it after his multi-buy round? Is it too late, or is it still okay?
Well, I'll read out his upcoming fixtures, okay? So he's got Melbourne at the MCG. Now, we all know Melbourne hasn't been super great this year. Then he's got Gold Coast Suns. That should be a very positive fixture. Then he's got Adelaide and Adelaide Oval. North Melbourne in Ballarat. So, look, out of those 4 fixtures, I'm really liking the 2 that are coming up.
Yeah.
And I don't hate the last 2 either.
Yeah,
so,
they're not horrible.
But then when we add in the fact that his break even, if he has a decent score against Melbourne, his break even is going to be much lower across all the competition. So he might put on $50,000 in the week leading up to the Gold Coast game. So round 11 after that game, he's probably going to go up by $50K. Do you really want to be paying another $50,000 for a guy who has the ladder buy and you can build your team around a bloke like this? I tend to think that time is now for him.
Yeah.
There's no such thing as a must-have. I never have subscribed to the must-have theory, but he's a guy that
he's pushing that envelope. Yeah.
Yeah, if you had your dream team, he would be a name on your list. So.
Yep, and I'm just going to reinforce this as well. We haven't seen a defender have as big a season like this since Doherty.
Yeah.
Okay, and Doherty was as close to must-have for the season as there was. So Brayshaw came home very hard last year.
Yeah.
He sort of falls in that same bracket if you jumped on at the right time. With these guys that go 100+ in defence or forwards, we have to get them.
Yeah, they're so rare to have. Yeah.
Yep, 120 means I don't think there's any such thing as a must-have either, okay? Because at the end of the day, if we're not getting him and we get someone who's averaging 100, it's only 20 points a week.
And if you can make that up elsewhere?
Well, yeah, exactly right. But the thing that I'm throwing out here now is at his price tag,
yeah,
you just got to jump on it because in essence, okay, him to, let's throw out a James Sicily.
Sure.
Okay. James Sicily is about 100,000 less than him in Dream Team.
Yep.
James Sicily will average anywhere from about 90 to 95, I would think, for the year. Lachie Whitfield's going at 120 already with a 30.
Yeah.
So let's say even if he goes 115 from this point, that's still 20, 25 extra points a week for an extra 100,000.
And in Supercoach, it's less than 40,000 is the gap between them.
Correct. So it's an absolute no-brainer. Now, in AFL Fantasy, trade of the week, okay, jump off Brodie Smith, jump on Lachie Whitfield. It's only going to cost you a couple of hundred.
Yeah, it's pretty. So I'm hearing you say if you want to get Lachie, this is the week to do it. For more Supercoach and Dream Teamers, because again, AFL Fantasy, there's 2 trades a week, use them or lose them. Is it worth jumping early on any cash cows to guarantee you get him now? Or is that a risk that's too big to take?
Well, Benny mentioned Young. I liked Young.
Yep.
I actually thought Garner's game was okay.
Yeah.
But look who's in the seconds. They got Boner. They got whatever else. Like
Burton could even be back this week.
Playing. Burton's coming back. I mean, who knows what happens there? So
Yeah.
I wouldn't go anywhere near them. Rotham over at West Coast Eagles probably gets a game this week.
Yeah.
I thought Oscar Allen lost big time last game.
Yeah.
Lost out to playing full back. So I think Rotham comes in because I think Barras is still out and Schofield's out, and I think there was another defender that might be out this week as well.
Jetta, but
so
not at all.
he might get a game. But at the end of the day, we don't have to stress, okay? Job security's bugger all anymore because we could almost cull D8 and F7, F8 at the moment, and M11.
Yes.
We're at a point in time now of the season where we can cull that to a guy who may or may not play at the end of the season.
Yeah, no, and that's fair enough too. So, We talked about Lachie Whitfield. We've talked Sam Walsh. We want to get to some unique ways of cash generation, as we've alluded to a few times this episode. So there's not a plethora of cows on the way through. We'll probably get an absolute bucket load of them in the last 5 to 6 weeks when we really don't need them. But between now and sort of round 14, where they're pretty critical, it doesn't appear to be a heap on the horizon. Let's talk about a guy that really has been one of the best cash cows for us this year in Riley O'Brien. I'm seeing a kind of this scattering across the fantasy community. Maybe it's in forums, websites you check out. That's fine. But there's a lot of talk about trading out a Riley O'Brien. He's in Dream Team. He's priced now over 500,000. He's gone up nearly 300,000 with a break even of 70. In AFL Fantasy, he's risen around about $250,000. He's got a break even this week in AFL Fantasy of 54, while in Supercoach, again, gone up a fair chunk of change, a couple of 100,000 through there, and a break even of 84. Lads, is this the week to consider trading him out? I know all those break-evens are certainly very attainable for Riley O'Brien. Sam Jacobs sounds like he's probably still a couple of weeks away. It wouldn't surprise me to see him after the bye round as the most likely time. But is now the time to top him out in price? Or is there need to wait maybe just a couple more weeks on Riley O'Brien?
I don't want him to go anywhere, MJ.
Why is that?
Well, we're looking at a guy, right, that has the round 14 bye. So let's break this down a little bit. Of course, every competition is different,
sure.
But Dream Team's the one that I mainly focus on, so that's what I know about. The break-even 70 in that competition. So look, in his entire season to date, he has not gone under 70. He hasn't been slowing down. He's obviously been in the system for a long time. He is the number one ruckman. He's coming up against the depleted ruck outfit in the West Coast at the moment, given that they've had a few injuries there. So it's a positive fixture. Melbourne isn't a great fixture. GWS is an okay fixture. Richmond's quite a good fixture at the moment for ruck. So, two decent fixtures, one bad fixture and one average fixture, leading up to the round 14 bye. But the big thing here is that the two ruckmen we want across the formats this year are Brodie Grundy and Max Gawn. And MJ, when do they have the bye? They
both share the multi-bye round in round 13.
They do. So do you think it might be a good idea if you don't own one of them, which I'm assuming you don't if you own Riley O'Brien at the moment, it might be a good idea to hold him on to round 14, given that his scoring hasn't been decreasing, given that he's been in the system for a while, and he's got a couple of good fixtures, obviously not a great one against Max Gawn, but might be a good idea to hold on to him and then make a pretty easy trade to either one of Max Gawn or Brodie Grundy, depending on who you don't have.
Yeah, and considering that Richmond matchup against a Soldo, once he gets back from suspension, is in that week of the multi-bye round where he's needed, it's very hard to kind of argue against it. But Rids, where's the logic difference with Riley O'Brien in contrast to Sam Walsh? Because coaches might be listening to this episode going, hang on, you've just used the logic of the multi-bye rounds of where is price at. Are you using the same logic? They might be hearing similar lines, but there's some unique differences between where Walsh is now and 2 weeks ago and where O'Brien is now and in a couple of weeks.
Okay, so the first thing is age.
Yeah, sure.
18-year-old versus a guy who's been in the system for 4 or 5 years and played SANFL for 4 or 5 years as the number one ruck. He then comes into the Adelaide Crows, and I could actually argue the point right now that he's now the new number one ruck for the Adelaide Crows. I think Sam Jacobs has to come in and prove otherwise, okay? So he might have to go to SANFL and he might have to wait for an opportunity that O'Brien gives him now to come back. I don't think it's a walk-up start. They were talking about these two at the start of the year being a toss of the coin.
Yeah, true.
O'Brien has came in and actually impacted games. We saw a couple of weeks ago, and he was actually, his last quarter on the weekend was almost the reason why the Crows got back into that game late.
Him and Brodie Smith,
Yeah, 100%. I think that was those two. He got on top of Stefan Martin and got on top of Oscar McInerney. Anyways, back to your question before I go rambling on other things.
Sure.
This guy, have a look at his body.
He's a big
He
boy.
is made to be a number one ruck, mate.
And athletic as too.
Oh, and of course he's going to be sore through the season. But if a guy with a body like that's going to be sore, imagine what an 18-year-old kid that's having his first pre-season at AFL level and then is a running machine that does 15-plus kilometres a game feels after having 2.5 months of football.
Mm.
You can't compare chalk and cheese because they're just totally different, okay? Riley O'Brien goes off for half, 5, 10, 15 minutes, a quarter or whatever, and has a chill out if he wants. He's got a good chop out in, Himmelberg at the moment and probably Jenkins this week.
Yep.
So he's got a decent chop out, and he's also... So, I mean, just for my liking, okay, I don't think you can compare that because body shape, how many years in the system, multiple pre-seasons versus one pre-season, the amount of running that they do per game, it's just a total chalk and cheese for me.
Yeah, all right. No,
and one other thing that just wasn't touched on either, they play completely different positions. So Riley O'Brien picks up 30 points a week, almost each and every week. The last 5 weeks he has not had less than 34 hit-outs. So a number one ruckman on average, I think, goes, the basic average is about 75 points per game. So he's already racking up roughly half his score just through hit-outs alone. So his baseline score is a lot higher than any midfielder in the competition or really anyone in the competition. We've got to be considering the fact that they do play different roles as well, whether that be, we're referencing Sam Walsh, but it might be another rookie that's slowing down a little bit at the moment. The beauty with a guy like Riley O'Brien is, you're probably going to get your 35 points in hit-outs alone before he gets, tackles and around the ground ball.
Yeah, no, fair enough. So you've made a couple of interesting conversation points right throughout this episode, and a heap of things. I think it's really helpful for coaches, both for now and as they navigate their way through the multi-buy rounds. But there's a trade, 2 players probably 2 weeks ago that we've spoken about that were the right trades, or arguably a right trade to make, and that was if you didn't have a Lockhart and get that bit of luck, moving Whitfield out, and then maybe moving a Patrick Dangerfield out after that injury impacted game, that questionable, will he be fit, will he not be, and then again getting injured late in this game, and yet again, for the second time in 3 weeks, we're talking about will Patrick Dangerfield play, will he not? But there was some pretty obvious trades of, a Whitfield to a Shaw. You've mentioned that already in this episode, Ben, and Rids, you've talked about a Dangerfield to a Zeeble trade where it's get these guys that could score like premiums, increasing cash, and also improve your side with the cash reallocated onto another player.
So, MJ, stop right there. I want to just highlight something, okay? We seem to have lost the philosophy as a general community, whether it's DT, AFL Fantasy or Supercoach, of sell high, buy low.
Mm.
You know what I mean? So guys that have been in a role before over and over and over and over again, Heath Shaw goes on massive runs. Jack Zeeble in the midfield is a 95 average player every day of the week. I can guarantee you right now, before the end of the season, Angus Brayshaw will go on a run. What did we say about Josh Dunkley early on? Hold on to Josh Dunkley, because as soon as he gets the role, he's going to go nuts. What about Zach Merritt? How many people traded Zach Merritt early on? What's he done now? He's gone off the tree. Let's remember the key rule to fantasy. Sell high, buy low. Jack Zeeble sitting there in Dream Team last 2 weeks ago at 515,000. Why are we doubting that? And the funny thing about it, okay, is when we sell high and buy low, the thing that really blows my mind is people see that as risky. Guys, no. When you buy high, that's the risk factor. If you go and buy, who was it a couple of years ago, Rory Sloane at maximum dollars, then he gets tagged and goes 50 for the next 5 weeks.
Yeah, correct.
That's massive issues. You know?
100%.
So again, people jumped on Whitfield a couple of weeks ago. Buy high, he gets injured 36. Who cares what his average for the season? And we say this all the time. It's from this point on when they bring into your team.
Yeah.
Who cares what's happened before? Heath Shaw at 530,000 with that draw that he had coming up, that was tasty as.
Yeah.
Zeeble with the midfield role now, tasty as. People watch the game. Don't look at the price tag. Don't look at the points.
Even had Elliot Yeo there, dropped 130k going into a Gold Coast and killed the Melbourne run.
Yep.
I mean, that's the type of buy where you look at that and you're saying, okay, he's only averaged 85 to that point in the season, but has his role changed? No. What did he average last year? Average 107. Is he known for these huge ups and downs? Yep. So we're buying him at the bottom of the swing, and 3 weeks later, his average over those past 3 weeks has been pretty high, MJ, nearly 130 points per game, and suddenly he's back averaging where you'd expect him to be averaging.
Yeah, what you paid for.
And he's put on another $100,000. So suddenly a lot of people in the community are a little bit more excited about Elliot Yeo, but the time wasn't now. The time was 3 weeks ago.
Yeah, exactly.
And the guy that's coming up this week, potentially?
Yeah.
Taylor Adams.
Yeah, true.
He may be back this week, early. He had a really poor injury-affected score last game. He may drop a little bit. If we see him in the right role, it doesn't matter what he scores this week. Jump on him next week.
Yeah. So what about someone like and again, we were talking about cash generation. Where's, say, like an Angus Brayshaw? Is he in a different part of the conversation? Because, again, coaches that own him are just, the past 3 weeks, he has had a role change. Do you just ride the Gus train out now, or do you jump off? Well, because, again, it's different but similar.
I am an Angus Brayshaw owner. I am as frustrated as the next guy. But you know what I see when I watch the game? Every time he's within 5 metres of that ball, he gets points.
Yeah.
It's that he doesn't go anywhere near the ball because he's sitting out on a wing and they don't use that wing. Like, it is so obvious, but the guy is in form. Every time he grabs the ball, he gets a handball, he gets a tackle, he gets a kick. You watch it. Every time he's within it, and he's very noticeable because of his helmet.
Yeah.
But the problem we have, is that he's just not being used like they had been in the season gone.
Yes.
So hold on to him. Buy high, sell high, buy low, He is at his lowest point right now. Where's the value? You're going to spend an extra $150,000 to a guy that's probably going to score the same for the rest of the year?
Yeah.
They come in troughs and turns.
Yeah, and on top of that, if you knew that the role change was coming, if you got some inside word, because none of us really knew that the role was coming probably about 3-4 weeks ago, his price was at $715. All right, trade him out then. If you know that, that's perfect. That's an amazing move. But if we're suddenly scared at $595K, the damage has been done now.
Yes.
We've lost $120,000 of value. So if we're talking about someone like Elliot Yeo, we're talking about someone like Taylor Adams, well, Brayshaw is now that guy that if you were not an owner, you'd be looking at him and thinking, okay, as soon as I see any uptake in his form, or as soon as I see Melbourne, using him potentially better, I'm loving that price at 600. And if you're viewing it from the outside in, if you're an owner, you've got to hold on to him right now. This is not the time to be trading him.
Exactly. And you know what? I'm tired of hearing about hindsight. One of the best DT, the Dream Team coaches I know, the Screaming Eagle, traded him to Rockcliffe 4 or 5 weeks ago.
Yeah.
So he saw the signs already that there was a potential happening.
Yeah.
So that's not hindsight if you make the trade.
That's it.
Yeah. And is that the same logic too for AFL Fantasy?
Of course it is.
Yeah, good. Just wanted to make sure that we're covering all our bases.
And you know what? AFL Fantasy, to a point, is you build the team, then you get comfortable. And, I mean, I'm talking from a little bit, I'm coming off a decent week in AFL Fantasy, but it took me forever to build that team.
Yes.
Okay. I was so comfortable with my rookies on the field that I was able to use a luxury trade last week to go Brayshaw to Josh Kelly because we got 2 use them and lose them. But if you've got comfortable around where everyone is, that's when you make the trade.
Yeah.
But you build around those guys until you get comfortable.
Yeah. Makes sense. Makes a whole ton of sense. I think it's going to really help a whole heap of fantasy coaches, no matter the format they play. Speaking of helping coaches, our Patreon army, which you can join at patreon.com/coaches panel, I've submitted a whole ton of questions for you guys for Dream Team, for Supercoach and AFL Fantasy. And to wrap up the podcast, going to chat through some of the questions that they have talked about. Let's jump straight in for it. Craig wants to know, I can upgrade to get either Whitfield or Grundy this week. Who's the greater priority? Again, we don't know the other 28, 29 players in the side, so it is a bit of a dark one. I'll throw it to you, Ben. I know it's a bit leading the blind because you don't know all the other variations in there, but if it was a pure 50-50 trade, who's the greater priority for you this week without obviously knowing the other options of who'd be on field?
Yeah, well, inherently I'd say Whitfield's a guy just because I feel like you're getting him at maybe the value price.
Uh-huh.
So we're looking at a guy like Brodie Grundy right now that's 800K, 50K more expensive than Whitfield, and might be even higher across the formats. He's obviously come off 2 huge weeks, but you don't expect him to be backing that up each and every week. He's got Max Gawn in round 12 as well, and then on top of that, they have the round 13 bye, and you know, the only benefit, I think, to not having Brodie Grundy at this stage is at least you've got one less guy for round 13. So
yeah.
I would be trying to build up my round 14, and you don't really want round 12 at this point. So it really is round 14, and that's why I'd be going Whitfield. And like I said, you're saving, potentially an extra 50K as well.
All right, fair enough. A question from Travis for you, Rids. It's a Supercoach and a real Dream Team question. I really like this question, actually. When is it best to just do nothing to your side?
When you have the right loophole options.
Nice.
So the bench loopholes, because both are rolling lockouts now.
Yeah.
So pretty much you can loophole guys on the bench. You can try and pick and choose. If you've got, say, a Parker scoring you a 60 one week, you probably take that as the loophole option because you're only going to better it by 30 or 40 points.
Yeah.
Whereas if you've got him scoring, like on the weekend, 30 points, then you're probably worth having a trade if you want to have a crack at it.
Yep. No.
So, again, laid out and stuff like that come into play. That's where Lockhart has become. Last year, people wouldn't have had so much success with Lockhart.
Yes.
Because of the rolling lockout. It means that the luck has changed, the way to play it. He was lucky to cover that Whitfield, for those 2 weeks. Happy days for those people that did that.
Yes.
But last year, same format, just a slightly different rule. I guarantee you not many people hold.
Yeah. No, exactly.
The confidence. So, again, what's the best time? If you're doubting the guy that you're bringing in and the upgrade's not the guy that you really want for the rest of the year, don't do it. Don't pull the trigger.
Yeah, absolutely. So
if you're taking, let's just say you want Lachie Whitfield, but you don't have the money, so you're going to accept someone that you haven't had all year and you're not really confident they're going to be a top 5. Let's just say, hypothetically, Laird, okay?
Sure.
If you're not confident Laird's going to be top 5 and you think Whitfield's going to be number 1 and you just don't have that extra 30 or 40,000 to get Whitfield, hold on. Wait for an extra week, reevaluate. Maybe a rookie goes up a little bit better. Maybe a better rookie comes in. Who knows? A Kyron Hayden might come in, this week and play, and you've got something slightly cheaper at the basement price.
Yeah.
But let's not also forget there's a mid-season rookie draft as well.
Yeah, I was about to say that's one of the great unique things that we'll be talking about next week. Maybe not so much on the podcast, but definitely at coachespanel.tv. We may even do a special, some unique Patreon content through there, talking about, something that we've never had before, which is an influx of cows coming into the AFL system mid-year. It's certainly going to be an interesting dynamic for us. Supercoach question from the big Mal down in Tassie. I'll throw it over to you, Benny. He wants to know, taking buys into account, what order would you rate the following players? Again, he's using the phrase must have in the next month. So in the order of priority, who would you rank them 1 to 4? Neil, Lloyd, Merritt, Kelly. Who would you rank in order of priority of trade target?
Well, I'm pretty hot on Kelly. So he's the guy that I'm immediately thinking is number one priority, especially with that round 14 bye.
Sure.
Now, what format are we talking?
Supercoach.
Yeah, I don't know exactly what his ownership is in that format, but I know in Dream Team it's very low at the moment. So he's the guy that I'm immediately gravitating towards. Now, someone who's been doing a little bit poorer might have a little bit of values. Jake Lloyd still has a slightly higher break even than what you might necessarily want. Has the round 13 bye. So maybe you're thinking he might be second or third, but here's a guy that is presenting as a little bit of a deal for you. Lachie Neale, again, Brisbane with a not so desirable bye. So he's got the round 13 one, but he's coming into a bit of form. So Zach Merritt, obviously, you're paying top dollar at the moment. He's not someone I'd really be looking into too closely. So if I had to put him in an order, I would go Kelly, then I would go Lloyd, Neale, and Merritt at 4.
All right, man. Fair enough.
And, MJ, can I answer the question
Yeah,
as
of
well?
course you can.
I want an equal one between Kelly and Neale.
Sure.
Supercoach.
Yeah.
Cool.
Neale is
Okay, yep.
130 average at the moment, and I think there's real potential he's going to be the number one scorer for the year in Supercoach.
Yeah, it's true.
But Kelly,
Wow, so
from
he's
now
going-
to the end of the year, Benny's 100% correct. He's going to be
value.
number 2 if there is a number 2.
Yeah. No, that's a really good pick. Well, we're speaking of, some options where we're doing the ranking of players. Kyle wants to know, we'll throw it to you, Reeds, in AFL Fantasy. He's given you 4 players again. Let's do the same thing in order of trade priority, factoring in buys and all that sort of stuff. Yo, Zorko, Neale, or Sidebottom? What kind of order would you put them in trade priority?
Oh, man, that's like... Okay, I'd probably go Yo number 1 because he's the one with the least ownership out of the 4.
Sure.
And I'm only guessing that, okay? So if there's someone else, then by all means, whatever. Who are the others? Zorko. I don't like Zorko because he can be tagged out of the game. So get rid of him straight away.
All right, Neale
Who's the other two? Sidebottom.
And Neale.
Well, I just don't like guys that can get 40 possessions and score 90.
Yeah.
And that I'm looking at Cripps and Neale in that, like, just for those formats. I love them as players, but for those formats, like, it's nothing annoys me more than a guy being best on ground, winning best on ground medals and everything else. You have a look. He's had 40-something possessions and he scored 95 Dream Team points or AFL Fantasy points. Yeah, so they annoy me. And then Sidebottom sort of comes and goes and everything else, but he is unique. So I'd go Yo, Sidebottom, and then the other 2 I don't care about.
All right, fair enough too. A couple more questions.
Oh, can I also, sorry.
Yes.
Just on Lachie Neale, please look at his bye. Okay,
Yeah.
After his bye, he's got a terrible run for about 4 or 5 weeks.
Yeah, nice pickup.
There's DeGoey, there's Steele, I think, there's Hutchings,
He
you might
gets
as well
the
bring
who's who of
Crowley
the
back.
taggers, yeah.
And he is, oh, yuck.
Yeah, it's a nice little pickup for coaches that might be looking at it.
Supercoach is different again because
Correct.
of the contested ball.
And the rewarding of that.
So that's for AFL Fantasy, not Supercoach.
Yeah, I like that, man. An AFL Fantasy question, we'll throw it to you, Benny. I'm going to give you 3 50-50 options. Throw it out there, and I just need you to tell me which of them you'd prefer. They're all comparable in price, and buy structure is a little bit different with the last option, but here it is. Right now in AFL Fantasy, which forward would you rather, Dusty or Zeeble?
Zeeble.
All
I
right.
don't know exactly the prices, but yeah, I'm not keen on Dusty at all.
It's less than 5,000, so it's comparable.
Yep.
Cornelio or Josh Kelly?
Kelly.
All right, this one, it is a bit of a bias structure, so it is different there, but Tom Stewart or Sicily?
Probably Sicily.
Okay. All right.
But yeah, it does depend on buys, obviously.
Yeah, the buys maybe a little bit more ceiling in Sicily than anything there. Louis wants to know, it's also a comment, Rids, which I'll kind of get your response to. He's curious, is Mitch Duncan the biggest sure thing this week versus the Suns? He's got a good history against them, good history right now, where I think he's averaging like a 120, 125, 130 across the formats. Is he one of the biggest sure things to score well this week, or is that falling into some false assumptions?
Okay, so I'm going to sit on the fence a little bit. I like him, but don't underestimate the Suns. We saw what happened last week. People thought Rockcliffe were going to score 150 to 200 points.
Yeah, true.
Don't underestimate the Suns. They're actually a very competitive midfield unit, and they play one-on-one football. One man plays on a man. So these guys aren't the greatest footballers in the world, and they don't have a really renowned tagger, but they play contested, competitive football one-on-one. So, yes, whilst I think Mitch Duncan's going to score very, very well, I wouldn't want to throw the captain armband on him, if that makes sense.
Yeah, no, that certainly makes a whole ton of sense. And while I got you there, man, a question from Peter again, another great Patreon supporter of the coaches panel. He asked a pretty simple question. You're a Tigers fan. I thought I'd throw it to you. Is Brandon Ellis legit this season to target in our formats? He says dream team, but really in any format? Is this role legit? Because we've seen historically he can average hundreds or thereabouts and pump out some really big hundreds as well.
Yeah, I spoke about this a few months ago, probably early on in the season. Ellis has been training in the midfield group all year, all pre-season. He's been playing that role where he went 100-plus in a few formats a couple of years ago. There's key injuries to key personnel like Jaden Short, who may not get back this year.
Yeah.
100%. And his contract is up at the end of the year, so he's playing for his contract and he's playing for his job.
Yeah.
Because he was put on the market last year, MJ, and I don't think there was many takers for him.
Yeah.
So I think he is absolutely, but I think there's another Tiger back that's getting under the radar at the moment.
Are you talking about Bash?
Yeah. So this guy is incredible, mate. He just does not stop scoring. And the other thing that's the most amazing thing, he's halfway through Ramadan.
Yeah.
So, we're talking about a guy who's not able to eat and stuff through the day, yet he's playing elite sport, okay? Amazing. So expect him to go nuts after the month of May.
Oh, it's interesting. I like that. A couple of uniques. And again, round 14 bye could be a nice time to pick him up. Just saying.
Oh, yeah. I would be picking 14 this week. Otherwise, I wouldn't be picking anyone.
Yeah, okay. So round 12 is probably way too late in the fixture. Is this the last week to grab round 13, guys?
No.
Okay.
I wouldn't do it. 14 only this week for me.
Yeah, and next week the same again, or is that it?
Sorry, we keep forgetting AFL Fantasy. AFL Fantasy, you just do whatever you want.
Well, yeah, you've got 3 trades a week through there too, so you can do a lot of sidewaysing through there and make some money while you do it. So
yeah, but make sure you're not just sideways trading for the sake of sideways trading.
Improve your team.
Better your team.
Yeah, correct.
Otherwise, you just lose focus on what you're trying to do, and then your ranking blows out to whatever.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, you might improve your ranking over that 3-week period, but you don't improve your team.
Well, you may not in the next week.
Well, that's true too.
It only takes one injury. We've seen that before.
Yes, no, that's very, very, very true. Hey lads, appreciate your thoughts on this episode. Some great content that I think is going to help a whole heap of coaches. Benny, appreciate your work suffering through man flu. Nice work.
Thanks, mate. I'd just like to give a good shout out to my mate, Himesh Sampas. He's an absolute legend. Loves the podcast, so shout out to you, buddy.
All right, nice work. And Rids, as always, a pleasure, mate.
Yep, no worries. I'm just going to shout out to whoever wants to hear me.
Yeah, shout out to Bubba. There you go. You can do that.
And I'll tell you what, mate. Anyone with a Crips, anyone that owns Crips this week, if you're happy with where you're at and you've got enough trades, consider trading him if you want. Do something a bit different and try something a bit unique. He's got a break-even of 150 plus across the formats. He's coming off a very slow score, and he's got a Jack Steele matchup this week, which I don't think is the easiest matchup in the world. So, I mean, why not try be adventurous and see if you can make 150, 200,000 out of that trade?
Yeah, so try something different. You might get a bit of a different result. Amen.
Mate, why do what everyone else is doing? How are you going to make ground?
You don't. You got to do something
Have
different.
fun with the game. It's the game for a reason.
Yeah, it is exactly.
Mate, there's
right.
only one person that can win these things, you know? And, like, who cares? Like, if you're focused on leagues and beating your mates, who cares what you do? As long as you get to the end point that you want, you're happy days.
Yep, no, exactly right. Lads, as always, appreciate your great advice and support for fantasy coaches, for Dream Team, Supercoach, and AFL Fantasy. I hope that's helped you as a fantasy footy coach. If it has and you haven't already done so, make sure you subscribe and follow us via Spotify and also iTunes, where you can get these podcasts and others every single time they go live. You get that notified straight to your device. Leave a 5-star rating and review. Plenty of articles dropping right throughout the week at coachespanel.tv. And if you want to support the Coaches Panel, you can do that by joining the Patreon army at patreon.com/Coaches Panel. Good luck this week. I hope your captain absolutely kills it. Any upgrade trades you make go your way. You're on the right end of the rookie roulette on ground for the cash cows. And then ultimately, you have your best score you've ever had this week.